I'll never forget the look on her face the moment reality caught up with her fantasy of control. Karen Wilkins stood at the edge of her perfectly manicured lawn, a porcelain statue of suburban pride, arms crossed like a judge awaiting confession. Red and blue lights danced across the polished hood of her golf cart, her trusty steed in her crusade for neighborhood order. She had no idea the story was about to flip, and this time, she wasn't the one holding the pen. Just moments before, she had been radiating smug satisfaction. There was a dramatic flair in the way she gestured toward our driveway gate like she was presenting a grand exhibit in some HOA tribunal. She'd built up to this, weeks of harassment, veiled threats, petty infractions written in blue pen and taped on our mailbox like scarlet letters. In her mind, this was justice. She had finally cornered us. We were, in her version of things, the unruly neighbors, rebels against her HOA kingdom. The cavalry had arrived in the form of 2 unsuspecting officers. She didn't know, couldn't have possibly known, who had picked up her 911 call. The officer to her left paused mid-stride. A voice crackled through his earpiece, and I saw, via our home security feed, how his expression changed. Curiosity stiffened into something colder, skepticism. He turned to her. "Ma'am," he said, voice clipped and controlled. "Dispatch is telling us this is a false report. There's no emergency at this address." Karen's jaw dropped. Her voice surged to that high, grating octave I'd grown so familiar with. "That's impossible." I heard screaming. Something suspicious is happening in there. But there were no screams, no cries for help, no emergency. Just a quiet morning inside our home, me working from the den, my wife Elaine on duty at the 911 call center. What Karen didn't know, what she could never have anticipated, was that the dispatcher on the other end of that call had recognized her voice instantly. Elaine knew the sound of Karen's false righteousness like she knew the back of her own hand. She'd heard it too many times before. We moved into the neighborhood 3 months earlier, thrilled to settle into what we thought would be our forever home. It was everything we wanted. Quiet, private, beautifully designed, and on the very edge of Oakwood Estates. Technically speaking, we weren't inside the HOA's boundary. It was something the previous owners emphasized during closing. We weren't under HOA jurisdiction, and we had the official documents to prove it. But Karen Wilkins didn't care about technicalities. No, she had appointed herself the unchallenged queen of Oakwood, complete with a clipboard scepter and a faux smile that could cut through steel. She came knocking exactly 1 week after we moved in. "Welcome to the neighborhood," she said, the saccharine tone barely masking the judgment already flickering behind her eyes. "I just wanted to let you know that your mailbox doesn't meet our community standards. You'll need to replace it within 7 days." I'd smiled, explained calmly that our property wasn't within the HOA's governance, even offered to show her the documents. She didn't even look. "That's a common misconception," she said with a patronizing laugh. "All homes within this visual corridor fall under our aesthetic guidelines." She thrust a massive binder into my hands. 3 rings of terror. Inside were 100 pages of rules so ludicrous, you'd think they were satire, approved shades of beige, permissible porch light brightness, acceptable gnome height, even rules about seasonal wreaths. My wife and I laughed about it that night. At the time, it all seemed a bit annoying but harmless. We were wrong. A week later, she returned, this time to complain about the shrubs in our front yard. A week after that, our porch light was too cool-toned. She would measure the height of our grass, count garden stones, and take photos of our backyard from the sidewalk. Once I caught her parked at the curb, snapping photos with an iPad, muttering measurements under her breath. Another time, she physically blocked our driveway with her golf cart so she could inspect hedge uniformity. Each time, I told her, we're not in the HOA. Each time, she seemed more offended by the very suggestion that her authority had limits. Then came the certified letter, a $750 fine for violations of community code. I had had enough. That's when we installed the security gate. It wasn't extravagant, just a black wrought iron gate with a keypad entry and intercom. But it stood like a boundary against madness, a quiet reminder that our property was private. Karen, naturally, went ballistic. The next day, she called and demanded our gate code for emergency access. She claimed she had the legal right to inspect any home within the visual corridor. She left voicemails threatening legal action, citing non-existent bylaws, and accusing us of endangering community standards. We documented everything. Every note, every voicemail, every photo. Elaine, ever the professional, began mentioning that we might need a restraining order if this kept up. I brushed it off until that morning. I was sitting at my desk when the intercom buzzed like a fire alarm. Karen, her finger glued to the call button, her face twisted with fury. I answered reluctantly. "You need to open this gate immediately," she barked. "Karen," I said calmly, "you know we're not part of the HOA. You have no authority here. Please stop. Don't you dare question my authority," she hissed. "I've been the president of this association for 7 years. If you don't open this gate, there will be consequences. I'm working. Please leave, or I'll report you for harassment." "You'll regret this," she spat before storming off. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. 20 minutes later, the security camera pinged again. Karen stood at the gate, phone to her ear, pacing like a villain ready to unleash her final plan. "Yes, I need police immediately," she said loudly, just within earshot of the mic. I heard screaming from inside the house, and now they won't open the gate. I think someone might be hurt. The address is 4287 Oakwood Drive. My stomach dropped. My hands trembled. She had just called 911, and she was lying. I tried to call Elaine, but she didn't answer. She was on shift. I stared helplessly at the screen as Karen pantomimed concern, glancing every few seconds at the camera like she was waiting for me to crack. What I didn't know, what would make the whole moment worth it, was that Elaine had been the dispatcher to take Karen's call. She knew Karen's voice, knew our address, and knew instantly that there was no emergency. Per protocol, she couldn't dismiss the call outright, but she marked it for a welfare check, flagged it as potentially false, and included a note. Caller has history of harassing the residents. 10 minutes later, a cruiser arrived. Karen rushed to greet the officers like she was the heroine of a Hallmark movie, pointing to the gate and mouthing exaggerated warnings. I stepped outside, ID in hand, and met them. "I'm the homeowner," I said. "There's no emergency. This woman has been harassing us for months." One officer nodded, touched his earpiece. His expression shifted. "Sir, is your wife Elaine Miller?" I nodded. "She's on dispatch right now. She's given us some context." Karen's confidence began to unravel. Her smile twitched. "Ma'am," the officer said, "did you report screaming and a possible emergency?" "Yes. There could be someone hurt in there." "Dispatch confirms you've made similar false claims in the past," the second officer said. And this time, the dispatcher was the homeowner's wife. "All 911 calls are recorded. This is a serious offense." Karen's color drained. She stammered. She's obviously covering for her husband. "I heard something. She's biased." The officers weren't buying it. "Karen Wilkins," the officer said formally, "you're being placed under arrest for filing a false police report and misuse of emergency services." As he read her rights, Karen's bravado melted into panic. She sputtered excuses, clinging to her title like it held magical immunity. "I'm the president of the HOA. I was just looking out for the neighborhood." But they didn't care. "This isn't over," she screamed at me as they guided her into the cruiser. "Actually, Karen," I said, smiling for the first time in weeks, "I think it is." Neighbors watched in stunned silence. Some filmed, some just stared. An older man walked up, hand outstretched. "We've been waiting years for someone to stand up to her," he said. "Thank you." 3 weeks later, we attended her hearing. The judge was not amused. We provided every piece of evidence, voicemails, photos, the binder, and of course, the 911 recording. She was found guilty. A $5,000 fine, 1 year of probation, 200 hours of community service, and a restraining order, 100 feet, no exceptions. But the cherry on top? The HOA held an emergency meeting and unanimously voted her out. Turns out we weren't her only targets. She left the meeting in shock, eyes darting like she still didn't believe it. Her kingdom had fallen, and peace, at long last, returned to Oakwood Drive.